He was a community leader, a trusted neighbor, and Pogo the clown at children's parties. Yet beneath John Wayne Gacy's painted smile hid a monstrous secret. Over the course of 6 years, at least 33 young men and boys vanished, their fates concealed right under the noses of friends and family in suburban Chicago. How did a precinct captain with a picture-perfect home life become one of America's most prolific serial killers? The story of John Wayne Gacy reveals how the mask of respectability can hide unspeakable horrors, what drove him from celebrated citizen to a name synonymous with terror. Everybody in Norwood Park knew John Gacy. He was the neighbor who lent out folding chairs for block parties and never missed a city council meeting. On election days, he wore the badge of a Democratic precinct captain, handing out flyers with a broad grin, shaking hands with voters, and promising to fix potholes or look out for a neighbor's kid. Behind the counter at PDM Contractors, he offered summer jobs to teenage boys, good pay, cash in hand, no questions asked. He sponsored parades, donated to the local police fund, and made sure his name was on every community raffle ticket. On weekends, he pulled out a battered duffel bag and transformed into Pogo the clown, white face, red nose, balloon animals twisting in his gloved hands. Parents would watch him work a crowd, laughing as he made a shy child smile or coaxed a joke from the mayor. He volunteered for charity drives, visited children's hospitals, and posed for photos at fundraisers, always in full costume, always ready with a story or a trick. Neighbors described him as generous, always eager to help with a home repair or lend a tool. His house, freshly painted and tidy, stood out on the block. He hosted backyard barbecues, served up ribs, and asked after people's families. If a kid needed work, Gacy had odd jobs at PDM, digging trenches, hauling lumber, sweeping out the garage. He ran his business with a handshake and a promise, hiring local teens and giving them a place to belong. He was married too, a picture of suburban stability. Christmas lights in December, a trimmed lawn in July, family photos on the mantle. His wife, Carol, and her daughters completed the image of a blended, happy home. To outsiders, the Gacys seemed like any other family on the block, but beneath the surface, trust ran deeper than it should have. Parents let their sons work late at his house, confident they were safe with Mr. Gacy. Police officers saw him as a model citizen, a man who knew everyone and kept his nose clean. Local politicians counted on his support at campaign rallies. In quiet moments, neighbors wondered how he managed to do so much for so many. Nobody questioned the man who showed up in a clown suit for the hospital fundraiser or handed out paychecks to boys who needed a break. The community believed in John Gacy because he believed in the community, or at least, that's how it looked from the outside. John Wayne Gacy's childhood was shaped by violence long before his name became a headline. His father, John Stanley Gacy, was a World War I veteran who drank hard and hit harder. The basement of their Chicago home became a battleground. Gacy, small for his age and often sick, tried to please his father, fetching tools, holding the flashlight, offering up schoolwork for a nod of approval. Nothing worked. His father called him sissy, mama's boy, and worse. The beatings came quick, sometimes for a clumsy mistake, sometimes for no reason at all. Neighbors heard the shouting through the walls. Gacy's mother, Marion, tried to shield her son, but her efforts only deepened his father's scorn. To his sisters, Gacy was the one who needed watching over, not the one who would someday need to be feared. His health set him apart even further. A weak heart kept him indoors. Blackout sent him to the hospital. Classmates noticed the way he stumbled, the way he missed school for weeks at a time. His father called it faking, said he was lazy, said real boys didn't cry or faint. The isolation grew. Gacy spent long afternoons alone, listening to the radio or organizing his toy soldiers in neat rows, order where he could find it. control where none existed elsewhere. But the worst wounds didn't come from his father's fists. Around age 7, a family friend, a local contractor, offered to take him for ice cream, then molested him. Gacy never told. He knew what his father would say, that it was John's fault, that he had brought shame on the family. The secret festered, teaching Gacy that pain could be hidden, that silence was safer than truth. Even at home, the rules shifted without warning. Gacy's attempts at affection, borrowing his mother's scarf, trying on a pair of her shoes, were met with humiliation. His mother, desperate to keep peace, sometimes punished him herself, forcing him to wear her underwear as a lesson. The message was clear. In this house, love was conditional, control belonged to someone else, and weakness was unforgivable. Years later, Gacy would say he loved his father. He chased approval that never came, measuring himself against impossible standards. The need for power, for control, took root early. Long before the crawl space, long before the clown makeup. In the darkness of that basement, the script began to write itself. In 1972, the first body went under the house. Timothy McCoy, a teenager passing through Chicago, never made it home. Gacy stabbed him in the bedroom, then buried him in the crawl space beneath the living room floor. That first grave set the pattern. Lure a boy with the promise of work or a ride, bring him inside, and make sure he never left. For 3 years, nothing surfaced. Then, in July 1975, John Butkovich vanished after an argument over unpaid wages. His car turned up not far from his parents' house, keys still in the ignition. Police took a report, but nothing more. Gacy buried Butkovich under the garage, pouring fresh concrete over the grave. By 1976, the pace quickened. After his divorce, Gacy had the house to himself. One after another, young men disappeared. Darrell Sampson, Randall Reffett, Samuel Stapleton. Each was last seen heading to a job site or leaving a bus station. Each ended up under the floorboards. He kept a system. Bodies stacked in trenches, head to feet, layered in quicklime and plastic. Some were buried near the southeast wall, others tucked beneath the main support beams. When the crawl space filled, he used the backyard. Robert Gilroy, the son of a Chicago police sergeant, was found there, buried close to the fence. Gacy never chose at random. He picked runaways, hitchhikers, kids looking for work. The crawl space became a map of vanished boys, each grave marking a name lost from a missing persons list. By 1977, the pattern was set. Lure, kill, bury, repeat. No one connected the dots. Not yet. In the spring of 1978, Chicago was gripped by economic anxiety. Factories were closing, jobs were scarce, and the city's young men were left searching for work wherever they could find it. John Wayne Gacy understood this better than most. He offered cash, no paperwork, a ride home if you needed it. For boys who had nowhere else to turn, the promise was simple: you'd be taken care of. But by that year, Gacy's methods had grown sharper, his routines more practiced. He no longer just lured teens with job offers. He watched for the ones who looked lost, who wouldn't be missed. The city's shifting mood made it easier. Police were overwhelmed by missing persons reports, especially those involving runaways or kids who might have been hustling for cash. In that climate, a vanished boy was often chalked up to bad luck or bad choices. Jeffrey Rignall was one of the few who made it out alive. In March 1978, Gacy picked him up near the Kennedy Expressway. Rignall remembered the sharp scent of chloroform, the cold of metal cuffs, the flash of a wooden device bolted to the ceiling. He drifted in and out of consciousness as Gacy tortured him, burning him with candles, beating him with whips. When it was over, Gacy dumped him in Lincoln Park, assuming, like so many before, He'd disappear into the city's shadows. But Rignall staggered to safety and told his story to police. His case file, thick with medical reports and bruised photographs, was quietly shelved. The city moved on. By the summer, Gacy had run out of space. The crawl space was packed, bodies stacked head to feet, quicklime barely masking the smell. He started dumping victims in the Des Plaines River, driving out past the city lights, rolling bodies from the bridge into the dark water below. The shift went unnoticed. In a city battered by layoffs and rising crime, a few more missing boys barely registered. Gacy's confidence grew. The boys kept coming, and the river kept secrets. For the vulnerable, the city had become a maze of dead ends. For Gacy, it was a hunting ground with no one watching. That would change the night Robert Piest disappeared. On December 11, 1978, Robert Piest left work at Nissan Pharmacy just before closing. He told his mother he had a chance at a construction job, extra cash for Christmas, maybe a step toward independence. The promise was simple: meet with a local contractor, ask a few questions, be home in time for birthday cake. Robert never walked through the door again. The Piest family waited through the night, calling friends, retracing steps, checking the routes between the pharmacy and home. His mother, Elizabeth, called the Des Plaines police before dawn. She insisted her son wasn't a runaway. Robert was 15, responsible, close to his family, never missed a shift at work. The urgency in her voice cut through the usual protocols. Lieutenant Joe Kozenczak listened. He knew the difference between a restless teenager and a boy who vanished without a trace. At the pharmacy, Kozenczak learned about the man Robert was supposed to meet: John Wayne Gacy, a contractor, well-known, well-liked, always hiring local boys for odd jobs. Staff remembered seeing Gacy that evening, remembered Robert stepping outside to meet him. But after that, nothing. No witnesses, no arguments, no struggle, just absence. The search began that night. Flyers went up, phone lines buzzed, classmates gathered in parking lots, hoping for news. Elizabeth Piest pressed the police for action, refusing to accept silence. For her, every hour mattered. For Kozenczak, the case was personal: a missing boy, a worried mother, a community that had lost too many sons already. By morning, the investigation was in motion. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, questioned pharmacy staff, checked the alley behind the store for any sign of struggle. The Piest family waited, holding tight to hope. But in Des Plaines, the sense of safety was gone. One boy missing, one family shattered, and a name, John Gacy, suddenly at the center of it all. Detectives set up their watch outside 8213 West Summerdale just after sunrise. Two-man teams rotated 12-hour shifts, never losing sight of the man at the center of it all. Gacy knew he was being followed. He played along, offering coffee to the officers, inviting them to breakfast at a diner, sometimes even buying their meals. He joked about the tail, called them his bodyguards, and seemed almost amused by the round-the-clock attention. But the surveillance teams paid close attention to every detail. They logged each stop, every errand, every visitor. They watched him drive to hardware stores for bags of lime, haul trash bags to the curb, and disappear into his backyard at odd hours. When Gacy's Oldsmobile was impounded, officers brought in search dogs. One German Shepherd froze on the passenger seat, a trained response to the scent of death. Investigators noted the reaction, added it to the growing file, and pressed on. Inside the house, Gacy tried to project normalcy. He invited two detectives inside one night, offering them warmth from the December chill. As the furnace kicked on, a thick, sickly odor drifted through the vents. One officer recognized it instantly, the unmistakable stench of decomposition. He didn't say a word, just met his partner's eyes. They logged the detail, knowing what it might mean. Meanwhile, The team built their case piece by piece. Gacy's stories didn't add up. The receipt for a roll of film, found in a parka pocket, matched one issued at the pharmacy on the night Robert Piest vanished. Class rings and driver's licenses turned up in desk drawers, none belonging to Gacy. Each clue tightened the net. On December 21st, Gacy slipped. Surveillance officers caught him with marijuana in his car. That was enough for an arrest, and enough to keep him off the property while detectives secured a new warrant. The house at Summerdale, so ordinary from the curb, was about to give up its secrets. On the morning of December 22, 1978, a team of evidence technicians crawled beneath 8213 West Summerdale, flashlights sweeping the dirt. The first rib bone surfaced in the southwest quadrant, not far from a sump pump Gacy had tried to sabotage. A hand bone lay tangled in roots. The stench hit hard, sweet, rotten, unmistakable. Within hours, 3 sets of remains were pulled from the crawl space, each body contorted into shallow graves, limbs pressed tight to save space. The grid system mapped out every square foot under the house, marking each find with a numbered stake. Investigators worked by headlamp, hunched over mud and concrete, careful not to disturb the evidence. By nightfall, the house was no longer just a crime scene. It was a burial ground. Technicians kept digging, breaking through patches of poured concrete and plywood. Chainsaws and pickaxes were needed to get through the makeshift barriers Gacy had built to hide his work. Every new trench revealed more. Bones, stacked head to feet, some wrapped in plastic, others left exposed to the soil. The southeast corner yielded 2 lower leg bones, and a patella turned up in the northeast. Nothing about the arrangement was random. Each grave told investigators this wasn't panic or impulse, it was routine. The Cook County Sheriff's Office sealed the scene. Forensic teams rotated in shifts, documenting every find, cataloging personal effects, class rings, belt buckles, scraps of clothing. They tracked the crawl space with a grid, noting which quadrant each victim came from. By December 23rd, 2 more skeletons emerged from beneath the concrete. The digging paused for Christmas, but the horror lingered in the air. When work resumed on December 26th, the pace quickened. 4 more skeletons came out that day, including the remains of Timothy McCoy, buried under a slab near an eastern support pillar. His body lay face down, skull pointed south, a Model A belt buckle still at his waist. The method was deliberate. Gacy had layered his victims, filling the crawl space until there was no room left. The search expanded, first to the garage, then to the backyard. Every patch of earth, every slab of concrete held secrets. By week's end, the count stood at 24 bodies, and still, the digging continued. The scale of the crime stunned even veteran officers. Each body was a name from a missing persons list, each grave a story cut short. The crawl space, mapped and measured, became a ledger of vanished boys. As the house gave up its dead, the full extent of Gacy's brutality came into view, methodical, unhurried, and hidden in plain sight. John Wayne Gacy sat in a Cook County courtroom, flanked by lawyers, while the world waited for answers. The trial unfolded over 5 weeks in early 1980, drawing crowds that filled every seat and left a line out the door. Jurors heard testimony from psychiatrists who described Gacy's mind in clinical terms: antisocial personality disorder, a complete lack of empathy, no remorse for the pain he caused. Expert after expert took the stand, debating whether Gacy was insane or simply incapable of caring about anyone but himself. The prosecution called survivors and family members, each one describing the last time they saw a son or brother alive. They listened as Gacy's own words were read into the record: confessions, diagrams of the crawl space, details only the killer could know. Forensic specialists described the bodies stacked beneath the house, the careful arrangement, the evidence of planning. Every detail pointed to a man who knew exactly what he was doing. On March 12, 1980, the jury left the courtroom at 2 p.m. They returned less than 2 hours later. Guilty on all counts. 33 murders. The verdict landed with finality, but it could not answer the question that haunted the city: how could anyone do this and feel nothing? The judge sentenced Gacy to death for 12 murders and life in prison for the rest, calling his crimes a stain that would never fade from Chicago's memory. As the years passed, the case did not close. Gacy filed appeal after appeal, but the verdict stood. He spent 14 years on death row, painting clowns and insisting he was innocent. Meanwhile, families waited for names to be returned to the unidentified. In 2011, Cook County exhumed the remains of 8 unknown victims. With new DNA technology, 2 more boys were identified: William Bundy and Francis Wayne Alexander, offering long-delayed answers to families who had waited decades. The legacy of Gacy's crimes endures in every missing persons poster, every mother's voice on the news. For the families, there is no closure, only the memory of lives interrupted and the hope that every victim will someday have a name. The crawl space is gone, the house demolished, but the story remains. A warning, a wound, and a call to remember those who never came home. On December 27, 1978, police uncovered the first of 29 bodies beneath John Wayne Gacy's home, a discovery that confirmed years of suspicion and horror. The investigation revealed that Gacy exploited his public image, community volunteer, precinct captain, and performer to gain trust, masking a pattern of brutality rooted in his own early abuse. In less than 2 hours, a jury found him guilty of 33 murders. Yet, even today, several victims remain unidentified, and some details of his methods and potential additional crimes are still classified or unresolved. The case forced law enforcement to rethink how they recognize and investigate serial predators, leading to reforms in missing persons procedures. Gacy's crimes left a lasting impact on forensic science and victim advocacy in the United States. As recent DNA efforts continue to name victims decades later, the full extent of his actions may never be known. What is certain, the Gacy case exposed the dangers that can lurk behind familiar faces, reshaping how we confront evil hidden in plain sight.